There are some trips you plan because they're popular, and then there are trips you choose because something about the place keeps pulling you in. For us, that place was Georgia. Living in the Netherlands, we got used to everything being organized, predictable, calm. Beautiful canals, perfect roads, bicycles everywhere. Life there is comfortable. But after a while, we started missing something harder to explain. We wanted mountains instead of that landscapes, old churches instead of modern buildings, spontaneous conversations, strong emotions, places with history you can actually feel. And somehow Georgia kept appearing in conversations, photos, travel videos. People talked about its hospitality, ancient monasteries, dramatic landscapes, and food like it was something unforgettable. So one day we simply decided, why not Georgia? And honestly, we didn't expect the country to leave such a strong impression on us. This video is not about luxury travel or perfect tourist postcards. It's about the atmosphere of Georgia, about places that feel alive. Today, we'll visit the capital city Tbilisi, explore Georgian cuisine, walk through the romantic hill town of Sighnaghi, visit the peaceful Bodbe Monastery, and discover ancient Mtskheta with its legendary churches and monasteries. And by the end, you'll probably understand why so many people fall in love with Georgia after just one trip. The first thing you notice in Tbilisi is contrast. Old wooden balconies stand next to modern glass buildings. Luxury hotels appear beside crumbling Soviet apartments. Ancient churches overlook busy streets full of cars, cafes, and street dogs peacefully sleeping in the sun. Tbilisi doesn't try to look perfect, and that's exactly why it feels real. The city stretches across hills, along the Kura River, and almost every viewpoint gives you another completely different version of the city. In one direction, you see old rooftops and church domes, in another, futuristic architecture. Walking through Old Town feels like wandering through layers of history. Narrow streets, stone walls, laundry hanging between balconies, tiny wine bars hidden behind old doors, and everywhere the smell of fresh bread and grilled meat. One of the most famous landmarks is the Narikala Fortress, overlooking the city from above. You can walk up or take the cable car. From there, Tbilisi looks almost unreal at sunset. The river reflects orange light, church towers rise above the rooftops, and the mountains in the distance remind you that Georgia is deeply connected to nature. But what makes Tbilisi memorable is not just architecture, it's the energy. The city feels emotional, unfiltered. People speak loudly, laugh loudly, drive emotionally. At first, it can feel chaotic, especially after the Netherlands. But after a few days, you begin to understand the rhythm, and suddenly it becomes charming. No, we're not going inside. Before coming to Georgia, we thought Georgian cuisine was mainly Khinkali and Khachapuri. But the food culture here is much deeper. In Georgia, meals are not rushed. Food is connected to hospitality, family, and conversation. A dinner here can easily last several hours. Of course, you can't avoid Khinkali, the famous dumplings filled with meat, herbs, and broth. There's even a technique to eating them properly. You hold the top with your hands, bite carefully, drink the hot broth first, and only then eat the rest. Tourists usually fail on the first try. Then there's Khachapuri, warm bread filled with cheese. Different regions make it differently. Some versions are simple, while the Ajarian one comes shaped like a boat with egg and butter melting in the center. Heavy? Yes. Delicious? Absolutely. But Georgian cuisine is not only about cheese and dough. There are walnut sauces, grilled vegetables, fresh herbs, slow-cooked meats, and traditional clay pot dishes. And then there's Georgian wine. Georgia is considered one of the oldest wine production regions in the world, with wine-making traditions going back thousands of years. Wine here is not just a drink, it's part of culture and identity, especially in Kakheti region, which brings us to our next destination. Sighnaghi is one of the most picturesque towns in Georgia. It sits high on a hill overlooking the Alazani Valley, with the Caucasus Mountains visible in the distance on clear days. People often call it the City of Love, partly because of its romantic atmosphere, partly because couples can officially marry here at almost any hour of the day or night. But Sighnaghi feels special even without romantic stories. The town is small, peaceful, and incredibly photogenic. Cobblestone streets curve between colorful houses with wooden balconies. The air feels cleaner here, slower. Compared to busy Tbilisi, Sighnaghi almost feels frozen in time. One of the most impressive parts of the town is its old defensive wall. It stretches for several kilometers across the hills and once protected the region from invasions. Walking near the wall with views over the valley below is probably one of the most beautiful experiences in eastern Georgia. And yet the best thing about Sighnaghi may simply be the atmosphere. Nothing dramatic happens here. People sit outside cafes drinking wine slowly, dogs sleep in the shade, church bells echo quietly across the hills. It's kind of place where you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. Just a few kilometers from Sighnaghi lies Bodbe Monastery, one of the most important religious places in Georgia. This monastery is associated with Saint Nino, the woman who brought Christianity to Georgia in the 4th century. She is deeply respected through the country. Even people who are not religious often describe the monastery as peaceful, and that's exactly the feeling we had there. The grounds are full of flowers, trees, and quiet pathways. Unlike some heavily touristic landmarks, Bodbe still feels genuinely spiritual. Inside the church, the atmosphere is calm and dark, with candles flickering against ancient walls. Below the monastery is a holy spring connected to Saint Nino. To reach it, visitors walk down a long staircase through the forest. The walk back is much harder than it looks, but the place itself is beautiful: cool air, trees, mountain silence, and flowing water. Whether you come for religious reasons or not, it's difficult not to feel something there. If Tbilisi is the heart of modern Georgia, then Mtskheta is its soul. This ancient city was once the capital of the Kingdom of Iberia and remains one of the most sacred places in the country. It's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The moment you arrive, you notice how different it feels from Tbilisi. Quieter, older, more reflective. The most famous landmark here is Svetitskhoveli Cathedral. For many Georgians, it's one of the holiest churches in the country. According to tradition, the robe of Christ is buried beneath the cathedral. The building itself is massive and elegant, built in the 11th century. Inside, there's very little luxury compared to many European cathedrals, but the simplicity somehow makes it feel even more powerful. Not far above the city stands Jvari Monastery. This monastery sits on the top of a hill where two rivers meet, the Kura and Aragvi. The view from there is one of the most iconic in Georgia. Wind constantly moves across the hilltop, and standing there feels almost cinematic. It's easy to understand why poets and writers were inspired by this place for centuries. Another important site is Samtavro Monastery. Less crowded than the main cathedral, it feels more intimate. Old trees grow inside the country yard, and the atmosphere is quiet and deeply reflective. Georgia is not perfect. Roads can be chaotic, service can sometimes feel unpredictable, cities are noisy, buildings are not always beautifully restored, but strangely, these imperfections are part of what makes the country memorable. Georgia feels alive. It doesn't feel a carefully designed tourist attraction. It feels real. You come for the mountains, monasteries, and food, but often you remember the atmosphere most of all. The warmth of people, the feeling of history everywhere, the mix of Europe and Asia, ancient traditions beside modern life, and maybe that's why Georgia stays in people's minds long after the trip ends. For us, it became much more than just another vacation destination. It became one of those rare places that genuinely surprise you. And honestly, that's becoming harder and harder to find today.